Welcome to this video on the Contax 167MT camera. The Contax 167MT was Contax's first SLR with automatic bracketing control and spot metering. It was aimed at the amateur market. It is a manual focus camera with program modes and dual metering modes that take lenses of the Contax Yashica line made by Carl Zeiss, Yashica and other manufacturers. Introduced in 1986, the camera has a quartz crystal to regulate all of its timing functions, including shutter speeds. The camera has a built-in winder capable of 3 frames per second. There is also motorized film rewind. The film speed range is 6 to 6400 ASA in 1/3 of a stop increments. Metering is center weighted or spot metering. Exposure compensation is provided plus or minus 2 stops in 1/3 of a stop increments. The range of shutter speeds is from 16 seconds to 1/4000th of a second. The shutter speeds are stepless. In addition to 4 program modes, aperture priority automatic mode and manual mode are also provided. Shutter flash sync speed is 1/125th of a second. An exposure lock is provided which locks the exposure value in spot metering mode. Also there is a battery check. A remote cable release port is also provided for a Contax electronic cable release and compatible accessories. There is also a depth of field preview button. Interchangeable focusing screens are supported on this camera. The main controls on the Contax 167 are the on-off switch, the exposure compensation dial, the ABC selector, the operation control that sets the shutter speed, operation mode and film speed, the rewind release, the ISO button, the mode button, the LCD screen, the drive mode selector, remote release socket, film feed indicator. This was the last Contax to feature this. Viewfinder cover, PC sync socket. On the front of the camera are depth of field preview button, lens release, LED for the self-timer. On the bottom of the camera is a tripod socket and a little screw that releases the battery compartment cover. Between the two is a reset button. The bottom plate of the camera unscrews with the edge of a coin and the battery compartment is underneath. The camera takes 4 AAA batteries. The main on-off switch goes off. On, center weighted metering. On, spot metering. On, auto exposure lock, which saves the exposure value and is always spot metered. The exposure compensation dial is simply rotated to adjust the exposure value used. It can be adjusted in 1/3 of a stop increments to plus or minus 2 stops of the metered value. The automatic bracket control is specified by rotating the lever around the exposure compensation dial. The white values are used in AV mode and the green values are used in the program modes, including TV mode. The white and green exposure bracket values are different. The winder supports single frame advance or continuous advance. The camera also has an electronic self-timer. The LED on the front of the camera flashes while the electronic self-timer is in operation. The camera mode is changed by holding down the mode button and sliding the operation control to change the mode. Modes are Program High, Program Low, TV, AV and manual. If the ISO button is held down instead, the film speed can be manually set. It is normally set automatically using the DX code. In TV or manual mode, the shutter speed is set using the operation control to scroll through the available shutter speeds. When operating in program modes such as TV mode, where you set the shutter speed and the camera sets the aperture, it is a requirement to set the aperture to the minimum value shown in green on MM series lenses. f16 on this lens. Older AE lenses without the minimum aperture marked in green do not work in program modes, only in AV or manual mode. The ABC mode, which was a new feature introduced on the Contax 167, enables a series of 3 exposures to be taken. One at the set exposure value and one each above and below the metered value by the exposure bracket value. The bracket value is set using the dial. 3 frames at 1.5 stops bracket. F10, F2, 3 frames at 1 stop bracket. The cable release and other accessories plug into the port on the back. To rewind the film, the button is held down and the slider slid across. The viewfinder cover on the cameras can hold Contax rectangular diopter lenses. In addition, there is a PC sync port for use with a flash that does not use a hot shoe. You have to ensure the shutter speed is 1/125th of a second or lower. The camera has built-in TTL flash metering for use with the Contax flashes that support it. It is compatible with TTL operation with later Contax flashes. The camera does not support second curtain sync, and it must be set to off when using flashes that support second curtain sync, such as the TLA 280 shown here. It has fail-safe flash shutter speed synchronization when used with Contax flashes. This auto sets the shutter speed when not in manual mode, when the flash is fully charged. Other flashes can be used in non-TTL mode. The viewfinder illustration from the brochure is shown here, and the viewfinder displays the aperture and shutter speed in use, along with the frame counter and an indication of whether exposure compensation, spot metering or a program mode are in use. There is also a flash ready indicator when using Contax flashes. This also acts as a confidence light when using TTL mode. The brochure claims the body of the Contax 167MT is the kind you love to fondle. I'm not sure this is a view shared by most Contax users who have owned one. The camera has a reputation for a quirky user interface, mainly the use of the operation control. Also, its use of different exposure bracketing values for AV and program modes is odd. Both of these features were dropped from later Contax SLR models, as were the program high and program low modes. There is also a window on the front of the pentaprism used to illuminate the viewfinder, which can be covered by the hand and affect the viewfinder display when it is not lit up. The battery track is also a bit awkward, as it requires either of the 2 buttons, mode or ISO, to be pressed and held down, and then the other one to be pressed to activate the battery check. Basically, the camera tried a lot of new ideas, some of which proved to be less than ideal. The camera still has a useful range of shutter speeds up to 1/4000th of a second, and added a second metering mode to the Contax SLR range. So it is still a useful camera, if a bit of an acquired taste. The viewfinder is very good and gives consistent results in bright light when focusing from either near or far with an f1.4 lens mounted, if the microprism collar is used. The Contax 167MT supports the cable switch S and cable switch L types of cable releases. In addition, remote controllers such as the infrared controller S can be used with them. A magnifier or right angle finder can be fitted to the viewfinder. There is a data pack that has an interval timer built in, and a battery pack, and 4 different focusing screens are available. In addition, they can be used with the Contax Macro Bellows PC. Within their limitations, they work very well, I would be careful to find one in good condition if considering buying one, and would consider getting it serviced and the light seals checked.